In 1982, Kathy Durst, a 29-year-old medical student, vanished from her home in South Salem, New York. Her husband, real estate heir Robert Durst, said he'd put her on a train to Manhattan that night. She was never seen again. No body was ever found. 18 years later, in December 2000, Durst's close friend Susan Berman was shot once in the back of the head in her Beverly Hills home, execution style. Berman had allegedly told friends she'd once posed as Kathy on a phone call, phoning in sick to Kathy's medical school the day after she disappeared. An alibi call made, prosecutors would later argue, at Durst's request. Then, in 2001, Durst, now living disguised as a mute woman in Galveston, Texas, was arrested for the murder and dismemberment of his elderly neighbor, Morris Black. Durst admitted to killing Black, but claimed self-defense, and shockingly, was acquitted. For over a decade, Durst walked free from all three deaths. Then, in 2015, filmmaker Andrew Jarecki released a 6-part HBO documentary series about Durst's life. Durst agreed to sit for extensive interviews, a decision he later called, under oath, a catastrophic mistake. In the final episode, after the interview had wrapped, Durst went to a bathroom, still wearing his microphone. Believing he was alone, he muttered to himself. The audio, unaware it was recording, picked up his own private accounting of the day. What the hell did I do? Killed them all, of course. He was arrested the night before that final episode aired. At trial for Berman's murder in 2021, Durst testified that the line had been misheard, that what he'd actually said, barely audible, was that others would think he'd killed them all, not that he had. The jury didn't buy it. In September 2021, 21 years after Susan Berman's murder, Robert Durst was found guilty. He died in prison, roughly 6 months later, having never faced formal charges for Kathy's disappearance. To this day, no one has ever been charged in Kathy Durst's case. She was declared legally dead in 2017. Some confessions come from guilt. Others come from a man so certain of his own untouchability, he forgot the microphone was still on. Andrew Bagby was a 28-year-old medical resident, well-liked, funny, the kind of friend people described as impossible not to love. In 1999, while in medical school in Newfoundland, he began dating Shirley Turner, a woman more than a decade older than him. The relationship was volatile from the start. Turner was possessive, prone to jealous outbursts, and at one point fabricated an entire pregnancy just to keep Andrew from leaving her. When he finally ended things in October 2001, Turner flew back to Iowa. Weeks later, on November 5th, 2001, Andrew was found shot 5 times in a Pennsylvania state park. Turner was the only suspect. She fled immediately, back to Newfoundland, Canada, where she held citizenship. Shortly after arriving, she announced she was pregnant with Andrew's child. Despite being the prime suspect in a murder, a judge released Turner on bail while her extradition case dragged on, ruling she wasn't a danger to the public generally. In July 2002, she gave birth to a boy. She named him Zachary. Andrew's parents, David and Kathleen Bagby, moved to Newfoundland to fight for custody of their grandson, the only piece of their son they had left. For over a year, they fought a legal system that repeatedly sided with the woman they believed had murdered their child. On August 18th, 2003, while Turner was still out on bail while her trial for Andrew's murder, She drove to a marina in Conception Bay South. She mixed a lethal dose of a sedative into Zachary's baby formula and took a large dose herself. Then she strapped her 13-month-old son to her chest and jumped off the wharf into the Atlantic Ocean. Their bodies washed ashore days later.
Andrew's childhood best friend, filmmaker Kurt Cuny, had already begun making a home movie for Zachary, a way for the boy to know the father he'd never meet. After Zachary's death, the film became something else entirely. A document of a justice system that let a murder suspect walk free long enough to kill again. The case led directly to a change in Canadian law, Bill C-464, known informally as Zachary's Bill, tightening bail conditions in cases involving children. Somewhere in Newfoundland, there's a law with a baby's name on it. That's the only version of justice this case ever got. To their social media followers, Jennifer and Sarah Hart looked like the picture of a modern family. 2 mothers, 6 adopted children, a wall of smiling photos at rallies and pumpkin patches. Behind that, for over a decade, there were repeated reports of abuse that never fully stuck. In 2011, Sarah Hart was convicted of domestic assault against one of the children. Welfare checks over the years in multiple states flagged concerns. Kids who were small for their age, kids who asked neighbors for food. None resulted in the children being removed. In 2017, the family moved to Woodland, Washington. Their new neighbors, Dana and Bruce DeKalb, said 2 of the children had come to them separately, asking for help and food, describing punishment inside the house. The DeKalbs started keeping notes. On March 23, 2018, Washington child welfare workers visited the Hart home. No one answered. The next day, the family was gone, packed up and driving south. No explanation to anyone. Cell phone data later showed Sarah Hart spent much of that final drive searching the internet. How much Benadryl constitutes an overdose? Whether drowning is a painful way to die. On March 26, 2018, in Mendocino County, California, Jennifer Hart pulled the family's SUV onto a flat clifftop turnout along the Pacific Coast Highway. There were no skid marks, no sign of braking. She accelerated to nearly 90 miles an hour and drove the vehicle straight off a 100-foot cliff into the ocean. All 8 members of the family died: Jennifer, Sarah, and their 6 children. Marcus, 19, Hannah, 16, Devontae, 15, Abigail and Jeremiah, both 14, and Sierra, 12. 3 bodies were found in the wreck immediately. It took investigators weeks to recover the rest from the water. One child was identified only by a single foot, still inside its shoe, that washed ashore separately. Toxicology showed Jennifer was legally intoxicated. Sarah and several of the children had high levels of an over-the-counter sedative in their systems. A coroner's inquest later ruled unanimously this was not an accident. It was a murder-suicide. 2 mothers who decided that if they couldn't keep their children, no one would. 100-foot cliff. A car with no skid marks. A family who'd spent years performing happiness for an audience that never saw what was happening in the back seat.